What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. Up to this point, we've been talking about a lot of ideas and concepts, and it's been quite an intellectual and theoretical discussion of emotional sobriety, and especially recently of differentiation. And now we are going to pivot from the theoretical to the practical. And I'm glad to say this because I believe that if this stuff has any real value to our life, it means that it really touches us in how we're living, how we deal with the experiences that we have in our lives, and especially the experiences we have in our intimate relationships. And so the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be inviting you to share in the chat situations where you have somebody has said something to you and you responded, but it stayed with you. You were quite disturbed by it. You didn't feel like you took care of yourself very well. So that's one example. Or a situation where you were trying to communicate something and you just didn't seem to get it across. You felt very misunderstood and weren't able to clarify what you were really trying to say to the person. So if you have an example on either side of either sending a message to someone or sharing something with someone that didn't come across, and you weren't able to find the words that most accurately reflected you in the moment, or somebody said something to you that knocked you off balance and you didn't know what to do to take better care of yourself, put that example into the chat room. We may start getting to them tonight, but what I want to do tonight is kind of set the stage for what we're doing by taking a clinical example from a book I've been reading. But before I do, let me set the stage of what all of this means. So we've been talking about a consciousness of differentiation. We've talked before this that emotional sobriety creates a consciousness of emotional freedom. Well, a consciousness of differentiation creates the same thing. That's why the overlaps between emotional sobriety and differentiation are so great. And I hope you've been able to see that if you've tuned into some of the discussions I've had about what the consciousness of being undifferentiated looks like, and then how our consciousness changes as we make that transition from an undifferentiated state of mind to a more differentiated state of mind. Once we start to achieve some semblance of differentiation, then what it means is that we learn to act for ourselves without impinging on the rights of others. I'll say that again. When we achieve a consciousness of differentiation, we learn to act for ourselves without impinging on the rights of others. Or another way of saying this is that we learn to stand for ourselves without standing against anybody else. That's what it means to be differentiated. So what happens with this, and we've talked about these different forces, right? In life, there's the inhalation and the exhalation, right? The inhalation is the we-ness of a relationship. The exhalation is the I-ness of a relationship. And all of life is this movement towards and away from, towards and away from. When we're well differentiated, that movement flows very naturally, very organically. We don't get threatened by the separateness of our partner, and our partner isn't threatened by our separateness. We accept that that's just another dimension of the way that we're connected. So we aren't threatened by that. So the movements do not create anxiety. Now remember, if we're undifferentiated, if I'm moving away from you and you've had some experience in your life where you were abandoned or other things that have created this idea that togetherness means being a we all the time, then you might start to get anxious because you're going to feel like you're being abandoned. And if on the other side, if now the demand for togetherness is so great, and you grew up in a situation where you didn't know how to hold on to yourself in relationship to somebody else's demands, then you might start having some anxiety that you're going to be engulfed and you're going to lose yourself in that relationship. Now, a lot of times we have both of those things. We're afraid of being engulfed and we're afraid of being abandoned, which creates a real craziness in our mind. We want the intimacy and we don't know how to tolerate it. Tonight, I'm going to use a clinical example from a book that I've been reading. So nobody's going to need to provide that tonight. You can think about it tonight. Thom, if you'll put my email and your email in the chat room, they could also submit their examples there through email if it's going to be a little longer than you want to type into the chat room. So I was going to introduce you to Franklin and Vera. So meet Franklin and Vera. So Franklin and Vera met when they were in college. They were both undergraduates. He was studying to get a degree in business. That's what he had wanted to do in his life. And Vera was an aspiring young artist. She was a painter and she loved to paint. They met in their junior year and they fell madly in love with each other. And as what typically happens, this is what Vera said. And now listen to the phrase here, to the phrasing. He swept me off my feet. Now, what happens when you're swept off your feet? Well, it means you're no longer grounded, right? You're losing yourself in the relationship. You know, when you're swept off your feet, then if your feet are off the ground. And if we're going to be able to have a good relationship, we need to be able to stay grounded. So already, Franklin and Vera were heading for trouble. Well, Franklin grew up with a very, very traditional family. And what he wanted was the traditional family. He wanted to be the person that goes out in the world and makes the money, and to be the provider in the family. And he wanted Vera to take on the very traditional role of being a housewife and raising their kids. And he wanted children, and so did she. And at that point in time, that seemed okay with Vera because she grew up also in a pretty traditionally oriented family. So at that particular point in time, even though there was an inkling inside of her that, well, Franklin was going to go ahead and realize his dream in his life in becoming a business professional, I am setting aside my desire to be an aspiring actress, to have children and to raise them and to create a household and try and support Franklin in his work, which for many years Vera did, willingly, without, much complaint, if any at all. But what I've said before, if when we start our relationship, there's even 1 degree of separation, after 10 years, that 1 degree turns into 20, 30, 40 degrees of disconnection. And Vera started to become increasingly resentful of the freedom that Franklin had to go golf with his buddies on the weekend, to do all the things he wanted to do while she was at home with the children. Now, every now and again, she went to hang out with her friends and had a, quote, woman's night out, but it was an exception, not the rule. Now, Franklin unremorsefully accepted the situation like it was. There wasn't much consciousness at all that Vera might be unhappy with the situation. He thought that she was living the life that she wanted to live. Now, if you asked Franklin, was that true? How do you know that? He would say, well, I just assumed it. But he never asked Vera, are you happy? Is this the kind of life you want to be living? I know I am, but I'm not so sure that this is what you want. Now, by the way, not many people in a relationship ask the other person that question. And the reason that question is not asked is because we don't want to know the answer. I mean, that's the bottom line to it. We really don't want the answer because we're not sure what the hell we would do with it if our partners turn to us and says, no, this sucks. This is not the kind of life I want to be living. And then all of a sudden, Franklin's whole idea of what this relationship was would be challenged and threatened. And he'd become incredibly anxious. So what they did, and this is what a lot of couples do, and I talked about it last time about this homeostasis, they created a marriage that created stability, not fulfillment. I will say this again, that the big mistake that most of us make when we're undifferentiated is we create a relationship that is stable, but that isn't necessarily fulfilling. It's a mistake a lot of people make in their life. So this takes us into the moment I want to talk to you guys about. And I'll read it from this book. I'm going to edit it a little bit as I read it, just to make it a little bit more. So eventually, Vera's resentment started to boil up. She was now challenging things. She wasn't just compliant and going along with things. She was starting to tell Franklin, I think you're selfish. She started some therapy herself, and then the selfish went to, I think you're a narcissist. So now this idyllic situation that he thought he had was starting to come apart at the seams. So Franklin wanted to see what he could do to restore the stability in their marriage. And so they went into therapy, and he started to take her out on dates. And we are going to join Franklin and Vera one evening when Franklin is taking her out to try to woo Vera back into falling in love with him again. So on the night in question, Franklin had sought out this pleasant underground terrain. This is a place where a lot of young people, lovers and young lovers, sat by candlelight, at the other tables. He hoped once again for patching things up. This would be a step in that direction. From his point of view, Vera seemed to be enjoying herself. So at one point during dinner, Franklin reached over and abruptly removed Vera's glasses. He didn't ask her. He just reached over and took her glasses off of her face. Vera immediately responded in the following way. What the fuck right do you have to take my glasses off? Goodbye to the evening, this wonderful romantic time, right? Goodbye to that. What the fuck right do you have to take off my glasses? Franklin, out of his position, insisted to her, trying to recover, right, and see if he could repair the damage that was taking place. He insisted that he meant not to put her at a disadvantage, like she said, because she went on to say, you took off my glasses so that I wouldn't see as well, so you could continue your dominating bullshit in this relationship. And I'm sick and tired of you always moving to have power over me. He said, that's not what I was doing. Vera, that's not where I was coming from. He goes, what I was trying to do was to be able to look into your eyes. I wanted to create a greater degree of intimacy between us. Now, she said, bullshit. I don't fucking trust you. I don't trust you. You've never fucking showed any interest in how I feel about anything, and this is the same shit. You don't even talk to me. You don't ask me before you take those glasses off my face. You just take them off my face. Well, he goes into therapy now, and he starts to talk to the therapist. He goes, what the hell is wrong with her? And she's sitting in the room with him. Does she have chronic PMS? Is she having an affair? Is that why she doesn't want me to be intimate? Now, pay attention. Because he is thwarted, he starts to fantasize and get all of these suspicions or come up with all of these explanations on why she's behaving the way she's behaving and coming up with any kind of an idea other than he had anything to do with it. So he comes up with all these attributes. Is she having chronic PMS? Is she having an affair? Is she just not in love with me anymore? Da-da-da-da-da-da. So what he's unaware of at that point is that he doesn't see that she experienced his move in the restaurant as just another of his many manipulations to hold on to his power over her and attempt to keep her vulnerable and dependent. Had no clue that that was going on. No awareness whatsoever. Now, this is what Vera said in that session. She goes, Franklin manages to make me feel helpless in what looks like the nicest ways. So do you hear how deep her suspiciousness runs? He makes me feel helpless in what looks like the nicest way. He often complains about my dependence on him, yet unwittingly sabotages my bids for my autonomy. On one occasion, he said to me, Vera, you just can't seem to cope with any practical things in life. Totally putting me down. Like I'm incapable. She says, what happens when you walk into the house and you sit in a den and I'm watching a TV show and you change the channel to something you want without checking in with me first? Now notice the pattern, right? That he did this when he took her glasses off, and he does it when he walks in the house, and he changes the channel without checking in with her. He doesn't even show an awareness that I'm sitting there absorbed in the program I'm at. It's like he doesn't have any awareness of me at all. Well, Vera started to own that she was very docile, that in the beginning this arrangement seemed to work for her and it created a relatively smooth relationship. But for a number of reasons, she had a change of heart. And with that change of heart, things started to get destabilized in the relationship. Now, remember what I talked about last week, is that when we learn to differentiate ourselves, one of the issues that happens is that our relationships are going to feel that break in the homeostasis. As we change things, what created the stability before can no longer create the stability now. And so now the relationship is forced to adjust in a different way, but it's not going to adjust in a different way unless both people are aware of how they've created this homeostasis and how they contribute to it. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to invite Roger and Thom in, is we're going to talk about what Franklin could have done when he got that feedback from Vera, and how Vera might have been able to talk to him about that in a way where she could stand for herself without standing against him. So, gentlemen, good evening.
I always get confused when you call me a gentleman.
Hey, Al. Hey, Thom.
So changing the old format, eh?
I thought I'd keep you guys on your toes, man. You guys have yawning. I don't want you yawning or anything like that. I want to keep you stimulated.
We're not going to get on our toes, are we, Roger? That's like
plus, you totally destroyed our homeostasis here.
I just wanted to demonstrate, what this looks like. Everybody's out there, what the fuck is going on now?
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. This is like
terrible...
taking your glasses off without asking you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he didn't ask me.
I didn't ask you guys about this, did I?
All right.
No, see, I have such faith in you guys, in your ability to be able to
adapt. Shut up, Franklin.
Yeah.
You're so full of bullshit, Franklin.
See that? The same distrust. I've not made any deposits in this emotional bank account with these guys after all these years.
I was just wanting to look into your eyes.
All right, Thom, you got anything you want to start with here?
Well, my thing is very simple. Is just you take turns. It's like so the idea. I think one of the mistakes that we make in couples work a lot of times that we make as well as couples make when couples work on themselves is we try to do too much at one time. And so I think the taking turns thing is a good thing here. And I think a good place to start, given at least what I'm feeling coming from just the scenario you've given so far is let's. And I just have an intuition, the gut feeling that Franklin could probably use some of this too. Is this? Let's just stop. Let's just start by helping Franklin really listen to what is it Vera? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Vera is saying. It's like because one of the things I've learned about stuff like that is that it's virtually impossible that there's not at least some truth to what she's saying. It's like, so it's not, it doesn't, I want to teach them a little bit about it's not all or none. It's not like nobody's on trial here, but let's really, first understand, then work to be understood. So that's the thing I thought about as you were talking is like, let's start where there's a hot button thing here. And it sounds like this woman could really, really benefit and from being heard, and he could benefit from having some lessons in listening.
Right. So look, one of the things that Franklin could have done, right, if he was more aware of himself, he could have owned that, God, you're right. What the hell am I doing taking the glasses off without asking you if I can do that? It's like
you don't have to indict yourself to do that. You can
say,
he could
"Oh my God!"
I never even thought about it that way. But now I see when you say that, I realize that's really invasive.
That's right.
Yeah.
He could own that. And he could say that, God, or if he recognized the pattern, he could say, oh my God, Vera, I did it again, didn't I? Mm-hmm. This is what you talked to me about in therapy when I changed the TV without checking on you. This is the same pattern.
If he knows the pattern at that point. They
did talk about this in therapy.
Okay.
So they had been in therapy. She had confronted him about the TV stuff.
Well, but let me say, as somebody who's been in a lot of therapy and a lot of it's couples therapy, it's just because I've been in therapy with my wife about it doesn't mean I've got it yet.
That's right.
It's like
right.
It does not mean that. It's like it's amazing to me, and I point that out if I'm giving an example from my own personal experience in couples therapy is or individual therapy for that matter is the idea that I can give you this insight and I can explain to you what I learned in this particular session that particular day, but I didn't learn. Most of the time, I didn't learn that in a particular session or a particular day. That was hindsight, integrating those conversations into. So you don't get it all at once, or if you do, it's probably not going to stick with you all together. But it's. So anyway, I'm just saying. I want to be compassionate to Franklin also and realize that he may not see those patterns. I didn't. He was seeing. I'm big on rule learning in my life, and I love doing it. But it's like I was really bad at it when it came to relationship stuff. I was really bad at not seeing those patterns.
Well, look, this brings up an important point, and we'll get to this too in a minute. Is that this may be a blind spot in terms of Franklin's consciousness.
Yeah.
What I've seen is that it's hard to show empathy to others if it was never shown to you.
Yes.
And so what might be going on here for Franklin, and I don't know that, maybe that comes later in the book, but let's just say if this was my patient sitting in front of me, I start to come up with the idea that Franklin's got a blind spot here. That he's talked about it, like you said, we went over in therapy, he still doesn't see the pattern, he does the same thing. So it's like, what is going on that he doesn't have this awareness? Now, if he could become aware of that at the point, that would be a great thing to share. My God, I'm starting to see a pattern here that I'm not even aware of, Vera. Oh my God, I am so sorry for continuing to hurt you in that manner. I can only imagine, because it's hard for me to empathize, how maddening that must be to you. I tell you I love you, but yet you don't feel it at all in the way I treat you.
Yeah. But it may not even be that dramatic. It may just be.
Well, I like the dramatic shit. Can I be dramatic?
No. That's why I'm here to put your glasses back on, man. It's like no, I know. That's why I'm here to balance it out, because I'm such a cool, calm, collected guy, and I kind of, and that's kind of that's what people appreciate about me. But no, I mean, no. And I was thinking is because you're. When you're doing your version of Franklin there, it's like he's a very insightful dude at that moment. But it's like, and I guess I'm just coming from my own experience of like, becoming an insightful dude was a slow process.
Yes.
So sometimes even we want to recognize success and build on it. So sometimes the successes are like something like, I never thought of it that way. I'm not sure I understand that, but it's like that way. If I'm saying that to you and you're Vera, you're going like, okay, that looks different to me. See, that's how I'll ask a client. Sometimes I'll say like, it seems to me his response is different than what you're used to. You seem kind of surprised by how he responded. It's like, well, yeah, because he stopped and said he didn't know something or whatever. It's like that's all I'm saying. Just some range in that it doesn't have to be the full insight at that moment.
Roger, what are your thoughts
somebody
about
tell me
it?
that's smart.
No, that's he's so emotionally dependent.
I need reinforcement.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to go with this. If I'm picturing myself as the therapist or the coach in the room, as opposed to putting myself in what I imagine to be Vera's position or Franklin's position, a couple of things that can happen, because one of the things I've seen in my own life and myself with relationships I've been in, but also with couples and so on, is we'll get into a situation where we're mutually triggering each other, right? Is that you feel like I did something that was invasive of your space or didn't show consideration of you. You get upset with me and come at me really strong, and then I feel attacked and I get defensive and aggressive, or I get defensive and withdraw, whichever of those two.
But defenses beget defenses.
Exactly.
That's one of the most things. As soon as somebody, sometimes I'll put my hands in there and just pretend to be able to hold their defenses down, because as soon as one goes up, the other one, it's automatic.
And what often happens is the emotion centers of our brain, the limbic system and the amygdala and stuff, just start on a trajectory where they're overriding the forebrain more and more, right? And the cerebral cortex more and more. Emotionality is and intensity emotionally is going up, and cognition, thinking things through, trying to figure it out, is going down. And often that'll go into a cycle where, the more we say with each other, just the more angry or hurt or both we both become. And so if that starts to happen for Franklin, depending on the level of awareness he has, and again, this is a pretty high level of differentiation from my perspective, but he could say, once she comes at him about how, upset she is with him for taking her glasses off, if he starts to notice himself getting defensive about that, he could speak to that, right? Which is one of the things I try hardest to teach myself and remind myself of, any reaction I'm having, I got two choices with it. Well, there's more than two, but I can own it and describe it and acknowledge it, or I can act it out one way or the other. And those tend to be my two options. I was working with a client today who, you know, when he feels like his wife is nagging him, he said, yeah, I get really pissed off. And I start to, I'll snap back at her. So we did a role-playing thing where he just practiced. I notice when you talk to me in that way, I immediately feel all this anger coming up inside of me. And as we were role-playing it, I had him practice saying, you know, that's not the experience I'm wanting to be having with you, because I know I tend to snap at you and then you tend to get more upset with me. So it's like, what I would like is there a way you could say that to me a little less, you know, angrily, a little less, you know, a little less name calling, a little less, you know, accusatory, and just let her answer, you know, but think about what you would like in that situation. First of all, describe and acknowledge what your experience is, and notice there was no blame. I said, you know, when you talk to me in that way, this is how I notice myself react, right? And this happens a lot with us. What I'd rather learn to do is talk about that anger coming up, but not just go with it, all right? And then she either has some room within herself to say it differently to him, or she can perceive that as him trying to control her, right? It's an extension of taking the glasses off, but who knows where it will go at that point. But then he can still hold on to himself, as Alan talks about it, and say, you know, I'm still not in a place where I feel like I'm able to respond to you in a way I would like to. So let me take a minute, right? Let me take 2 or 3 minutes, kind of slow myself down a little bit here, and then come back and talk about, you know, whatever comes to his awareness about that. You know, I got to take some responsibility here. That thing you're nagging me about, I agreed to do that, and I didn't really want to. Yeah. I didn't really want to do it, but I said, yeah, I would, just to get you off my back about it. And now my way of showing you that has been to procrastinate about it. And it's been 3 days, and you're really frustrated. I get it. So, but what I need to look at with that is, you know, I need to find a way to find the courage and the willingness to get more honest with you when you ask me to do stuff that you would like for me to do. I got to first check in with myself and say, would I really like to do that or not? Because if I don't, what I'm starting to understand in our communication, this is what happens. I end up showing you a different way I don't want to do it. You end up getting frustrated as hell because I told you I would do it and I'm not. And then we end up in these fights that just go on and on about it. That's right. So I get that you're frustrated with me. And now it depends on, with regard to the task, which is like the content of the issue, but their process is the other parts we've been talking about, right?
Yes. But look, what you're saying, Raj, see, is takes an awareness, right? So one of the things that we've talked about with differentiation comes a greater awareness. You know, that's one of the things that we've seen through this whole process, is that our awareness really needs to increase. Now, let's say the person wasn't even as together as you just described to be able to own that. See, another possibility would be able to say, wow, I can see how upset you are, and I still don't put this stuff together. You know, wow, what is going on? Now, he could show curiosity. That's what I wanted to demonstrate now. This is something that Thom has brought into this discussion that I've also really, I'm a big champion for this, is he could say, out of his curiosity, say, wow, I noticed that I had no awareness that you would be that upset about that. And I can really see that, and I'm still baffled. And now I'm curious about why I am so baffled about this. Can't I know? It'd be nice to resolve this now. Can we put this on hold right now, and let me explore what the heck is going on with me with this? I need to take it to the therapist and see what I could do to figure this out. So even if he can't muster up what you said, Raj, If at that point in time we're being confronted, instead of being defensive, we show some curiosity as to what's going on, it's a big step forward.
Well, let me just add this one. I'll try to be real brief with this. You're talking about curiosity, you're talking about humility, and you're talking about willingness. And
That's right.
It's like, and this is one of the things that I was thinking about this when you were talking, Roger. Is one of the things that I, you know, I mean, this stuff is hard to learn. I mean, it's like if you're trying to learn how to play a musical instrument, or you're trying to learn how to do a sport or something like that, you know, you have to practice over and over and over again. You know, you're going to be shitty at it at first. We in our culture act like we should just learn these concepts about communication and then be able to do them. It's like you can't. So what I always tell people is get your money's worth out of therapy by blaming therapy, you know, and say, you know, be able to say, and I say that with some humor, but I say, you know, say it. Say this is something I'm working on right now. You know, and this is something, and and you brought that back to that same thing too, Alan, to be able to say, like, I'm taking this back to therapy. It's like, it's because I know it makes a big difference, and I encourage individual clients I see, and maybe I'm being biased against males because I know I think I'm sometimes maybe unfair to males because I know a little bit more about how they think, and therefore I can be distrusting because they're similar to me, but it's like, I think it really goes a long way, and it's probably without gender specific things. It's like to be able to say, you know, that I am talking about this in therapy. It's like, then thank you, you know, and because that's also saying I'm trying my best to represent your point of view too. I'm not just trying to explain to the therapist how you're my problem. I'm trying to figure out what my issues are.
And we can see the struggle that Franklin is having, because when he goes into therapy and he wants to now blame it on her PMS or blame it on
don't do that, Franklin.
You know,
Franklin.
Franklin's in trouble at this particular point in time. But you can see that dismissiveness or disapproving is going to just create more of a problem. It's not going to solve it. You're not going to be able to get rid of the problem by trying to dismiss it and telling the other person they shouldn't be feeling that way and all those other things. So that's all the stuff that Franklin's doing. Well, let's open it up for a few of your comments on this part. Next week, we're going to talk about what Vera can do differently, because she's furious with Franklin, understandably so, but how she might be able to talk about that in a way that doesn't alienate her. But before I do, I just want to I'll leave you with this thought, and then we'll open it up for questions. So this is what differentiated couples do. They don't operate from shoulds or supposed tos. That's just not part of their relationship anymore. They've moved beyond that. And their appreciation for one another overrides their anxiety, and therefore there are fewer issues of control. That they're really able to see who their partner is and appreciate who that person is and encourage that person to be who they are. I want you to want what you want is kind of the attitude that comes across. They don't regularly take their anxiety out on each other as do couples that are in trouble. Couples that are in trouble are constantly taking their anxiety out on each other. They retain the ability to make rather fine distinctions about one another's motives. So despite all the forces activated by our projections from the past, our emotional dependence, our second guessing each other's wants or motives or intents, all the social expectations that come with relationship or cultural influences, we don't let them override what I'm going to say next, where we give each other the benefit of the doubt. Right? And treat each other as innocent until proven guilty. You know, what low differentiation does is the person is guilty until proven innocent. And that's where the struggle comes in. So with that said, we will open it up for a few comments, and we will continue this lively discussion next week. I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.